All right. Well, good evening, and my name is Michelle Summerall, Vice President of Instructional Services. It is my pleasure to extend a special welcome to you this evening for this special event, which honors Mr. Keith Morris, recipient of Itawamba Community College's Mississippi Humanities Council 2022 Humanities Teachers Award. The Mississippi Humanities Council is a private nonprofit corporation funded by the United States Congress through the National Endowment for the Humanities to provide public programs in traditional liberal arts disciplines to serve nonprofit groups in Mississippi. The Mississippi Humanities Council creates opportunities for Mississippians to learn about themselves and the larger world and enriches communities through civil conversations about our history and culture. I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to tonight's presentation, and at this time, please join me in welcoming the Division Chair for Communications, Ms. Anna Britt Bigno.
I've had the honor of working with Keith for 12 years, and I'm proud to introduce him tonight. Keith is a graduate of the University of Mississippi, where he earned his bachelor's degree, and of Mississippi State University, where he earned his master's degree. He has taught English courses at ICC since 2008, including writing, creative writing, and literature courses. He co-created the courses World Literature 1 and Drama Production 4, and created writing for publication. He has received the William Winter Faculty Scholar Award. Keith serves as a sponsor for both Omicron Zeta, ICC's chapter of the English Honor Society, Sigma Kappa Delta, and for ICC's Film Club. He is the poetry editor for ICC's arts journal, The Calliope, and he is the poetry judge for Sigma Kappa Delta's literary journal, Hedera Helix, and for ICC's poetry entries for the Mississippi Community College Creative Writing Association competition. He is a member of the Mississippi Poetry Society. In the past year, Keith has published in the Louisville Review, The View from Woodall, 10th Street Miscellany, and the Hare's Paw Literary Journal, and he received second place in poetry in the Tishomingo Arts Council 2021 Spring Writing Competition. He also writes and produces music. In 2021, he released Things That Are Not Here, a collection of 11 original songs, and he recently wrote and recorded the soundtrack to the North Mississippi Rural Legal Services documentary trailer. Since 2015, he has volunteered as a fundraiser for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Keith and his wife Shannon have two sons, Parker and Connor, and I know Keith is extremely proud of these two boys. Please join me tonight in welcoming Mr. Keith Morris.
I've got two pairs of glasses, but just two eyes. To read. Thank you, Ms. Bagno. I really appreciate the introduction. It was really nice. And Dr. Summerall, I appreciate the award. Thank you so much. And the Humanities Council, what an honor. It was such a nice get-together Friday night. Very nice. I appreciate all that. And I thank you guys for coming tonight, whether you're here of your own free will or coerced or bribed. I appreciate it. Most of all, I'd like to thank my family. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law are here, and I want to just to introduce my family, Shannon and Connor and Parker. They're awesome bunch of folks. I'm very proud of them. They, whenever I'm working on a project, I tend to get kind of moody, and I may lock myself in my office for hours at a time, which includes me talking to myself. Usually I argue with myself, but they put up with me, and I really appreciate that. You'll have to forgive me. I made a C in speech when I was in college, mostly because I skipped. It was an 8 o'clock class. But I'm going to try to do the best that I can to get through this. Shannon asked me how long this was going to be. I said, I'm probably going to talk about 20 minutes. And she said, 20 minutes? I said, don't you want to hear about your husband? And she said, I'll live with you. Anyway, I have had the great fortune to have been published in the past few years. It's something that I've always wanted to do all my life, and I could not believe when it happened, and then when it happened again and again and again, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a dream come true. I've been writing since I was in the second grade, I guess, and my brother had a tape recorder that looked just like this, and some of you may have one of this when you were little. Ours wasn't that fancy, didn't have that fancy tone knob on there. But I would spend, I'm talking about hours with just a blank cassette and putting in there and recording. And I would tell stories and have it, tell them, listen to them back or make up songs. And I guess that's when my love of writing really started. And when I began, it was just for fun, something to do. It's just interesting how the purpose of writing for me changed over the years. And at one point I felt like I lost purpose, but I got it again. There were really three influences that helped me form, I guess, my purpose, but I'll get to that in just a second. Again, see in speech. I wrote because I loved music. That's how it all really started for me. I was fortunate enough to have a brother who listened to cool music. My mother listened to country music, and I would listen to it with her, but I didn't like it. But he listened to really good music, and I don't know what would happen if he had listened to disco. But it really impressed me. Plus, he played the guitar too, so that was something that really helped shape my writing as well. But I remember when I was in the second grade is when I wrote my first two songs that I can remember. One was called Switchblade, which sounds like a really serious song for a second grader to write about. The other was called Bubblegum, and I still remember the lines from that song. Bubblegum is tasty, bubblegum is chewy. Fantastic lyrics, I know. Take that, Sir Paul. Anyway, I started recording young, and I ended up moving to a jam box. That's how I recorded. And finally, I got a 4-track recorder when I was a freshman in college. But I would write these songs, and I would want to remember them, so I had to record them somehow. When I talk about writing tonight, I'm talking about poetry and music, because to me, those two things are the same. But my idea was I'm going to write these songs and record them, because one day, I just knew one day I was going to be in a successful rock and roll band, just like every other young child. But I also started writing poetry too, and really seriously in high school. In addition to writing so many songs, I wrote, some of you will know what a trapper keeper is, but I had a trapper keeper that was filled with little scraps of paper. You buy them, they're about 1.5 inches thick. By the time I graduated from high school, it was about that thick to try to close. And I wrote terrible poetry, and I wrote a lot of it, but it was a lot of fun. And that was something I really, really enjoyed, was writing. And from elementary school up until I was a senior in high school, I played in a little rock and roll band called White Lightning with some of my best friends. And by the time I graduated high school, having written what I had written, I thought, I really want to make music that I make, not play someone else's stuff. There's nothing wrong with a cover band at all, but I really wanted to make my own stuff. By the time I was a freshman in college, I was really looking forward to college, because I don't know if any of you remember or not, 92.1 out of Oxford, it was a college radio station that broadcast what would now be called alternative music or progressive or independent music. And I was thinking that, wow, when I go to college, everybody's going to be listening to this type of music. I got to Northwest first semester, and everybody was listening to Ice Ice Baby and Friends in Low Places. Diametrically opposite songs. So I was very disappointed about that. But I did make one of my best friends, Richard Patrick. He played guitar, and we met. He was actually my sister-in-law's nephew. But we met and talked, and he was interested in doing the same thing. So together, we formed a band, Trampling Floor, proud to say, and we played for about 11 years. But in that time, it was a time of growth, etc. And the reason I'm losing my own purpose in this show about purpose, when I was in high school and even in college, I was writing music because I loved it. And I didn't treat the music any differently, but the goal for that music was to somehow make a living. That's what I wanted to do. Make the song, make a living. Sure, it would have been great to have been as big as the Beatles, but if we were as big as the Connells or someone like that, that would have been fine too. Just as long as I could do that for a living. And as far as the poetry concerned, in the back of my mind, because I was really naive, I was thinking, well, one day I'll have arthritis and I'll turn to these poems and I'll publish them all. If If you know anything about poetry and compensation, those two don't usually go together in the same sentence. Let's see where to go. But we played for about 11 years, and then after 11 years, we just stopped. We didn't really break up, we just stopped playing. And once that happened, I didn't really feel like writing anymore. It's like, what was the reason for writing if I couldn't do anything with it? Now, I did get the opportunity to play with one of my friends who I played with in high school. I just played music. I played bass, and that was a lot of fun. And that looked like that was going somewhere at one time. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. A friend of, it's Will Smith. It was my friend I played with. His friend was good friends with Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers. His dad, Will's dad, was also friends with Rick Dees from the Rick Dees Weekly Top 40. Both Greg Allman and Rick Dees got copies of that CD. So we're still relatively young. I guess we were 20-something years old. And I was thinking, man, something's going to happen. I'm going to at least be able to play music and earn a living from it. Well, of course that didn't happen. I ended up leaving after a while. Because I was working 40 hours a week and then be gone all night Friday, all night Saturday playing. And it was a lot of fun, but I just couldn't do it anymore. But it's back to writing. I just didn't feel, I didn't understand, or I wanted to write, but I couldn't write. And it was like writer's block, and you've probably heard about people talk about writer's block. When you have writer's block, you still write, you just don't like anything that you write. And that's what happened to me. I would write, I have another notebook, not as thick as a Trapper Keeper, but about that big, of page after page after page of ideas that started, but they never got finished. And that's depressing as heck to look at, but that was the truth. It wasn't until after Shannon and I had gotten married, I started playing a little bit. And then it kind of changed when Parker was born. I wanted the boys to grow up and just be aware that they could create things if they wanted to create. I really wanted them to do that. So even when Parker was an infant, I would put him on the bed and play guitar for him. And after he got a little older and can talk, your families are probably the same way. We are always making up silly songs at our house. Just about, it's time to feed the dogs, things like that. So there were three things that Parker loved when he was little. He loved powdered donuts, orange juice, and his little stuffed puppy dog. So we'd sing a little song called Powdered Donuts. And I thought, it would be really sweet if I could take that and make a real song with that, just so he would always have and could always keep. And I did. I ended up downloading an app for my new iPhone that I got back then and figured out how to do it. It took forever to figure it out and almost as long to play the song, but I did it. I was like, that's something he can always have. And I was like, it kind of got me interested. Maybe I can do something else. Well, then Connor was born, so now we had two kids crying in the house, so it kind of took away from all that. But what was really sweet, you know how babies, just a little bit before they can talk, they'll make those little noises, little cooing sounds. Connor would go, ah, and I would do it back to him. So it'd be like 45 minutes of us just doing this back and forth to each other, because I'm the kind of dad, when the kid says do it again, I'm going to do it again until the kid passes out. But, the same thing. It's like, that little sound is so pretty. I'm going to take that and turn it into something. And I ended up writing a song for the boys out of it. Shannon even sings on it. Sure does. But from that came another song, Daddy's New Truck, another song that Parker would sing when he's running through the house getting ready on Sunday morning. Pants on Mama. That started it. I was like, this is a lot of fun. And I started to really love it again. But it became that same thing. It's like, okay, I've got to try to do something with this. I'm not going to the grave and to think in myself that I wish I would have. I think that's the worst thing that anybody could ever say is, I wish I would have. So, I meant to show this earlier. That's Richard and me when we were younger. It's May 17th, 1994. This slide has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I forgot to put it up earlier. So I had written this song for Shannon, and I hadn't recorded it yet. And I thought, this is a good song. I liked it. Okay, and I thought I need to try to at least push it somewhere. So I thought, I'm going to send it off to Nashville. You can't just send songs to Nashville. There's this bureaucratic process you've got to follow. But luckily, Shannon worked with a guy at AFA, J.J. Jasper, and J.J. knew Jeb Stewart Anderson, who's a songwriter in Nashville. He wrote songs for Joe Diffie and Tim McGraw, and I got his email address and emailed him, just asking him, how do I even get started? And this guy was the nicest guy, wrote me back, answered all of my questions, gave me lots of really good advice, and he told me about this place where you could send music. So I did. Of course, they didn't take it at all. And that really didn't bother me, because I was thinking, that's fine, that's okay. And I emailed him again just to tell him what the results were from the first time of sending off music, and he told me something, and I tell you what, this really got me. And it's been said in different ways. John Lennon said something different about you don't need the world, but Jeb Stewart said this, and it really stuck with me. So you don't need Nashville to tell you your songs are good. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And you can replace Nashville in songs with anything in the world. You don't need Scribner to tell you that your book is good. You don't need Better Homes and Gardens to tell you that your lawn looks good. You don't need that. It's not about that. It's about what you put into it. And that really stuck with me. And after I got that, it was like or during that time is when the whirlwind just really started. I really started working hard on music, still not really sure of what I was going to do with it. It was also during this time I started writing poetry again. I hadn't done that in so long. It was a big passion of mine that I just kind of put to the side. But I started doing it again. And I had halfway sent off some work when I was in college and maybe a little after. When I say halfway, it wasn't even halfway, it was barely, because when you send off work, you have to send off a bunch to a lot of different places. I think I was sending off one poem to the New Yorker or Poetry Magazine, like the Atlantic. You can't do that, or you could, but I couldn't do that. But I thought, I'm going to try to do something with this. Not for, definitely not for fame, and definitely not for fortune, but just so that my kids and my wife could say, look, my husband did this. This is a thing that will always be here. It will outlive me, and it's there. So I did try. I sent away, and I did just send away 2 or 3, like in 2016 or 2017. One submission was immediately rejected, and it took the other nearly 3 years to finally get accepted, or 2 years, I can't remember. But I do remember the day that my first poem got published, and I was 47, 48 years old. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I made this thing, and somebody else liked it, and they're going to show other people this thing. Now, it was a really neat experience. So I kept doing that, and I've been lucky the time since. And I still worked on music too, and I still do, even though I know that it's just going to be probably just me listening to in the end, but that's fine. But another piece of, I'm going back to my purpose again. See, again, I'm trying to get my art here. Purpose, what's I going to say? I could look at my notes, couldn't I, if I can understand them? There we go. Oh, when I started, right around the time my first poem got published, is actually the day before my friend Richard committed suicide. And that was one of the most devastating events of my life. Not just because he was a good friend, I mean, he was like a brother to me, but at the same time, he was my audience. He was the guy I could bounce ideas off. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And if I made a song and sent it to them, he would hear every nuance that I had intended. He got it without me having to explain it to him. That was a beautiful relationship, and I miss that guy. But I had finished a record in May of 2019. I can't even remember. COVID took my memory. But I was working on this record, and my whole idea was I'm going to record it, and I'm going to let Richard mix it because he can do that kind of stuff. But he died. So I ended up writing this whole record just for him, sort of as a tribute. And I remember I never could really sing well. I'm not going to make any bones about that, but especially as I've gotten older, I can't sing nearly as high. And I was getting really frustrated, and I was trying to mix a song, and I I heard him. I mean, I don't care. I heard Richard through the music just say, "The song is all. The song is all." That makes complete sense to me. Richard would never say that because Richard wasn't really a words guy, but that's what he would mean, that the song is all. Another way to think about that is, Ian Brown. I mean, I love the Stone Roses. Ian Brown was the lead singer for the Stone Roses, probably, to me, the second best band to ever come out of England. But an interviewer asked him and said, when you guys were first rehearsing your music, what were how do you put it? What did you hope to get through your music? And he says that what you do is more important than what you're going to gain from it. And to me, that makes absolute perfect sense. It's not about making something and trying to get something from it. It's about the thing itself, about creation. And sometimes, I'm about to wrap it up, Dr. Summer. Sometimes I still find myself not wanting to keep going, or not really understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I am super meticulous about things that I make. And it wasn't until probably about a year ago I thought about this. Maybe it was because I was being so meticulous that I thought about my dad. My dad is a building contractor. He's not the kind of building contractor who rides around a dually and talks on his cell phone all day. He's the kind of guy who says, the roofers aren't going to be here until Thursday, so we're going to roof the house on Wednesday. And my brother and I will be like, oh God, I hope not. But we built several houses in Dogwood Hills, which is a subdivision in Batesville. Or Daddy did, I didn't. And this was like 1/10 of the subdivision, and I think I counted at one time about 12 houses that I know of that Daddy built, and there are probably several more that he built before I could remember. And in one of those houses was a spec house. He didn't build very many of those, but he built a spec house. And I remember one Friday afternoon, it was about 4:45, and we had finished the house. We were getting ready to leave, and we're getting everything out because they were coming to lay the carpet and linoleum on that Monday. And plus it being 4:45 on a Friday, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is the first time ever that I'm going to get off work early. So we got off at 5. But as we were leaving, there was a hall. If you can just imagine like this wall being the wall of a hall, and at the end was a bedroom, and in that bedroom was a window. And the sun was coming in just right, kind of shining down the wall. And as Daddy's walking out, he looks back. I see him do this, and I'm thinking, uh-oh. So he said, go out to the truck and get my level. So we went out to the truck and got his level and put it on the wall, and you could tell that one of the studs in the wall was bowed out. And I'm looking at, and I see him doing this with the level to show where it's bowed, but I'm looking and said, Daddy, you can't tell. He said, well, it's bowed, but Daddy, you can't tell. I said, oh, I know where this is going. Go out to this truck and get my saw. I'm like, oh no. Anyway, so the wall is finished, it's painted and everything, but Daddy cuts, to fix a stud, if it's crooked like that, you cut on the back side of the bow, cut a square out, you get your skill saw done in about 1/3 of the way, and then push on the other side until it's straight. You put a wedge in it, you put braces on it, and that fixes the crooked stud. And that's all done. But now you still got this hole in the wall. So this is Friday afternoon. Daddy patches, puts the hole, the sheetrock back in the hole, muds it, has to wait for the mud to dry. Comes back Saturday morning. I didn't have to, thank goodness. Remuds it. Has to come back again after it dries and sands it. Then he has to paint it. And he has to come back Sunday morning and paint it again. Then come back Sunday night to make sure that it doesn't need a 3rd coat of paint. All because of that one crooked stud. Nobody would have ever seen it, but Daddy did. And I think about that. I think about that situation when I am working on a project and I don't like something and I have to totally delete, if it's recording, having to delete everything and start from scratch. Or if I spend, and I'm not lying, and this is ridiculous to even admit, spend 15 minutes looking at one of my poems going, do I put a dash? Do I not put a dash? Draw, erase, draw, erase, draw, erase. It's just crazy. Because it's, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I mean, if somebody reads the poem, that's great. If somebody listens to the song, that's great. At the end of the day, it's about what I think about it. Can I go to bed at night knowing that I did the very best that I could with what I know and what tools that I have. So I guess that, as I'm trying to wrap up, that one thing that I learned about my purpose is it's not about where the thing I make goes. It's about the thing itself. It's about the whole process of going through that to create something. To me, that puts me more in touch with God than almost anything, because that tiny little fraction is what it's like to make something and see it, and there it is. What was not there before is there now. When going back to the houses one more time, when a friend of mine took us flying when I was at Northwest, it's the first time I'd ever flown. He had his pilot's license, and we flew out of Hernando, flew over Sardis Lake, and flew over Dogwood Hills. And I asked him to because I knew Daddy was getting ready to start a new house. And sure enough, as we flew over, we could see Daddy and everybody down there working. You know, and I looked at him and go, oh, you know, it is true. People do look like ants from in the air. But I started to look at all these houses too, and I was like, man, you know, they all look like little boxes just sitting there. That's exactly what they look like, just little tiny boxes. But some of those little boxes are boxes that my dad made, and that my dad put everything he had into making his little box perfect. So that's what I found out about my work, is that the songs that I create and the poems that I write, those are my little boxes. And I thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I was like,
Oh,
little boxes. I like that. I like that. Because I was like, where are the little boxes? Where are the little boxes? And then I was like, oh, I love that. I was like, oh, that was awful. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Mr. Morris was honored this past Friday, March 25th, at the Mississippi Humanities Council's Public Humanities Awards ceremony in Jackson. Tonight, we are joined by Ms. Carla Faulkner of the Mississippi Humanities Council. Ms. Faulkner joined the Mississippi Humanities Council in 2021 as project coordinator for the prison education program. After moving to Mississippi from Texas, she received her Master of Arts degree in history from the University of Mississippi. A former MHC board member, she recently retired from a 30-year career as a history instructor and academic division head at Northeast Mississippi Community College. Her work supports humanities education in Mississippi prisons, made possible by a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Faulkner.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I so appreciate it. The Mississippi Humanities Council is very pleased to honor Keith Morris for his outstanding teaching here at Itawamba Community College. Now, every year we recognize a Humanities Teacher Award winner at each of the state's colleges and universities. And of course, they're asked to present a lecture like the one you heard tonight. They receive a cash award, and then as they said, he was publicly recognized for his achievements during our awards gala last Friday. Now, the MHC is turning 50 this year, and so we're spotlighting public programs that focus on topics that reflect Mississippians and their stories. Since our founding in 1972, we have recognized that Mississippi scholars and teachers like Mr. Morris show the importance of the humanities in creating engaged and informed citizens. At the Mississippi Humanities Council, our motto is, the humanities are for everyone. And this is true for both students here at ICC, for the people of Tupelo, for the population that I work with in our state's prisons, and everywhere across the state. The council creates opportunities for Mississippians to learn about themselves in the larger world and to enrich communities through civil conversations about our history and culture. We invite all of you to join us in this work. Please visit our website, mshumanities.org, or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to learn more about us and our programs. Thank you so much for honoring Mr. Morris and the work that he does that has such an impact on individual lives. Thank you.
Thank you again for attending, and we have a reception for you in the lobby.